Have you ever noticed how some people speak the truth so directly it almost feels violent? But when they leave the room, everyone feels a strange sense of relief. They don't soften. They don't disguise. They don't protect anyone's ego. They simply say what's happening without fear of the reaction. And what happens? The people around them tense up at first, but then they start trusting them more than anyone else, because they know they'll never be deceived. Now imagine if you stopped editing your words out of fear of hurting someone and started speaking with that same radical clarity. What would change in the way people see you? You've been trained to believe that honesty without a cushion is cruelty. That truth needs to be wrapped in softness, delivered with apologies, sweetened until it's almost unrecognizable. You've learned to protect feelings above everything else, even above reality itself. But here's what nobody told you. Every time you soften the truth to protect someone's comfort, you're participating in a silent agreement. An agreement that says their fragility is more important than clarity, that their temporary discomfort is more dangerous than the slow poison of living in illusion. And you know what happens? You become an accomplice in their self-deception. And worse, you become a prisoner of your own edited version of reality. This isn't about being brutally honest. It's about understanding why some people speak without filters and why, despite the initial shock, they end up being the most trusted, the most respected, the most free. Because what you call rudeness, psychology calls something entirely different. Let me show you what's really happening when someone speaks with radical emotional clarity, and why you've been taught to fear it. When you meet someone who is brutally honest, your first reaction is almost always discomfort. They say things that create tension in the room. They point out what everyone sees but nobody dares to name. They don't perform the social dance of pleasantries and polite lies, and your conditioning immediately labels this as rudeness, as lack of empathy, as emotional violence. But here's the distinction most people miss. There's a universe of difference between cruelty and clarity. Cruelty aims to wound. Clarity aims to illuminate. Cruelty is ego attacking ego. Clarity is truth meeting delusion. The brutally honest person isn't trying to hurt you. They're simply refusing to participate in the collective hallucination that most social interactions have become. They're not willing to trade truth for temporary comfort. They're not interested in managing your emotional reactions at the expense of reality. And this refusal to play the game is what creates that strange relief you feel after they leave the room. Because deep down, beneath all your conditioning, beneath all the social programming about niceness and politeness, there's a part of you that knows. A part of you that's exhausted from the performance. A part of you that's starving for something real. Think about your relationships right now. How many of them are built on a foundation of edited truths and careful omissions? How many conversations do you have where you're constantly calculating what you can and cannot say? How much energy do you spend managing other people's perceptions and protecting their feelings? This is the hidden cost of emotional dishonesty. It's not just about lying. It's about the slow, constant drain of living in a reality where truth is always secondary to comfort. And here's what happens to you over time. You lose touch with your own authentic voice. You become so skilled at editing, at softening, at cushioning, that you can no longer hear what you actually think. Your thoughts become pre-filtered before they even reach your consciousness. You don't just lie to others. You start lying to yourself. This is what psychologists call emotional labor. But it goes deeper than that. It's a form of self-abandonment. Every time you choose comfort over clarity, you're telling yourself the truth is dangerous, that reality needs to be managed, that people can't handle what's real. And the most insidious part? You start to believe that this makes you a good person, that your constant editing and softening is a form of kindness, of emotional intelligence, of maturity. But it's not. It's cowardice dressed up as compassion. Now let's talk about what's actually happening in the mind of someone who speaks with brutal honesty. Because this is where everything shifts. These people have made a fundamental decision that most people never make. They've decided that their relationship with reality is more important than their relationship with your comfort. They've chosen clarity over likability, truth over temporary peace. This isn't a lack of empathy. It's a different kind of empathy. It's the empathy that says, I respect you enough to tell you the truth. I trust you enough to handle reality. I care about you enough to risk your discomfort for your growth. And here's the paradox. The people who speak with brutal honesty often care more deeply than those who constantly soften the truth, because they're willing to endure your anger, your defensiveness, your rejection, in service of giving you something real. They're not protecting themselves by wrapping truth in comfort. They're exposing themselves by standing in the naked clarity of what is. Think about the people in your life who've told you hard truths, the ones who didn't sugarcoat your self-destructive patterns, the ones who called out your excuses, the ones who refused to validate your victim stories. How did you feel in the moment? Probably defensive, angry, hurt. But 6 months later, a year later, who were you grateful for? Who actually helped you change? Who gave you something you could work with? Not the people who told you what you wanted to hear, not the ones who validated your comfortable illusions. It was the ones who had the courage to speak clearly, even when it cost them your immediate approval. This is the power of radical emotional clarity. It cuts through years of self-deception in a single moment. It creates the kind of crisis that forces growth. It refuses to let you stay asleep. But here's what you need to understand. This kind of honesty comes with a price, and most people aren't willing to pay it. The price is loneliness. The price is being misunderstood. The price is watching people prefer comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. The price is being called cold, harsh, insensitive, mean. The price is standing outside the warm circle of collective delusion and watching everyone inside pretend that everything is fine. Because when you speak with radical clarity, you break the social contract, the unspoken agreement that says we'll all participate in each other's illusions. We'll validate each other's comfortable stories. We'll never say what we actually see. And the moment you break this contract, you become dangerous. Not because you're cruel, but because you're real. And reality is the most threatening thing to a person who's built their entire identity on illusions. This is why brutally honest people often end up alone. Not because they're unlovable, but because most people would rather have pleasant lies than difficult truths. Most people would rather be comfortable than awake. But here's what happens to the people who choose radical clarity anyway. They develop something that most people never find: self-trust. Because when you stop editing your truth to manage other people's reactions, you develop an unshakable relationship with your own inner voice. You know what you think. You know what you see. You're not constantly second-guessing yourself through the filter of other people's comfort. This self-trust becomes a form of freedom that nothing else can give you, because you're no longer a prisoner of other people's emotional fragility. You're no longer performing a version of yourself designed to keep everyone calm. You're just real. And reality, it turns out, is the only solid ground there is. Now here's the part that most people don't see. Brutal honesty isn't about dumping every thought and feeling without discernment. That's not clarity, that's just verbal diarrhea. That's ego having a tantrum and calling it truth. Real radical clarity comes from a place of deep psychological maturity. It comes from someone who has done the work of separating their own projections from objective reality. Someone who can see clearly because they're not looking through the fog of their own unprocessed emotions. The brutally honest person isn't reacting. They're observing, they're not attacking, they're illuminating, they're not trying to win, they're trying to wake you up. And this distinction is everything. Because cruelty comes from weakness. Clarity comes from strength. The cruel person uses truth as a weapon because they're trying to dominate, to hurt, to establish superiority. The clear person uses truth as a gift because they're trying to help, to liberate, to establish reality. And you can feel the difference. In your body, in your gut, when someone is being cruel, you feel attacked. When someone is being clear, you feel seen. Even if both feel uncomfortable in the moment, the quality of that discomfort is completely different. One makes you want to defend and contract, the other makes you want to reflect and expand. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. Which side of this are you on? Are you someone who's still trapped in the comfortable prison of edited truths and managed realities? Are you still spending your energy cushioning every statement, softening every observation, protecting everyone from the sharp edges of what's real? Or are you ready to step into the uncomfortable freedom of radical clarity? Because here's what nobody tells you. The moment you stop protecting people from truth, something shifts in your entire life. The relationships that were built on comfortable lies start to fall away. And that's terrifying, because you watch people leave. You watch them choose their illusions over your presence. But then something else happens. The people who stay, the ones who don't run from your clarity, they become the realest relationships you've ever had. Because they're not with you for the performance. They're with you for the truth. These are the people who trust you completely, who come to you when they need to hear something real, who value your perspective precisely because they know it won't be filtered through social pleasantries and ego protection. These are the relationships that feel like solid ground in a world of quicksand. And this is what you gain when you trade likability for authenticity. You lose the crowd, but you find your people. You lose the shallow connections, but you find the deep ones. You lose the comfortable delusions, but you find reality. And reality, it turns out, is where all real growth happens. Now let's talk about what this looks like in practice. Because radical emotional clarity isn't about walking around insulting people and calling it honesty. It's not about being tactless or cruel or unnecessarily harsh. It's about developing the courage to speak what you see without apologizing for seeing it. It's about trusting that truth, even uncomfortable truth, is ultimately more loving than comfortable lies. It's about refusing to participate in collective delusions, even when that refusal costs you social acceptance. It means when someone asks for your opinion, you give it. Not the edited version designed to protect their feelings. The real one. It means when you see a pattern in someone's behavior that's harming them, you name it, even when they don't want to hear it. It means when everyone else is pretending that something dysfunctional is normal, you're the one who says this isn't okay, this isn't normal, this needs to change. And yes, this makes you uncomfortable to be around, because you're a mirror, and most people don't like what they see when they look in mirrors. They prefer the softly lit, carefully angled, filtered version of themselves. But for the people who are ready to see clearly, who are done with illusions, who are hungry for truth, you become invaluable. You become the person they can trust absolutely, because they know you'll never lie to protect their ego or yours. This is the power of radical emotional clarity. It separates the people who want comfort from the people who want growth. It separates the people who are hiding from the people who are seeking. It separates the people who are asleep from the people who are waking up. And here's what you need to understand. You can't have both. You can't be radically clear and universally liked. You can't speak truth without filters and maintain the approval of people who need those filters to maintain their illusions. You have to choose comfort or clarity, likability or authenticity, the warm circle of collective delusion or the cold freedom of standing in truth. Most people choose comfort, and there's no judgment in that. Comfort is seductive. The approval of others feels good. Being part of the group satisfies something primal in us. But there's a cost to that comfort. And the cost is yourself. The cost is your authentic voice. The cost is living in an edited version of reality where truth is always negotiable and clarity is always dangerous. And over time, that cost becomes unbearable. Because you can lie to others, but you can't lie to yourself forever. Eventually, the disconnect between what you know and what you say becomes a kind of psychological violence. A violence you're committing against yourself. This is why people who develop radical emotional clarity often describe it as a form of liberation. Not because it's comfortable, but because it's real. Not because it makes them popular, but because it makes them whole. They're no longer fractured between what they see and what they say. They're no longer performing a version of themselves designed for other people's comfort. They're just there, fully present, fully honest, fully themselves. And that wholeness, that integration, creates a kind of power that nothing else can give you. So here's what I want you to consider. What would happen if you stopped editing your truth? What would happen if you spoke with the same clarity that you think? What would happen if you refused to protect people from reality? Some people would leave. That's certain. The people who need you to validate their illusions would find you threatening. The people who've built their relationship with you on comfortable lies would feel betrayed. You would be called harsh, insensitive, cold, mean. You would be misunderstood. People would confuse your clarity for cruelty. your honesty for hostility. But something else would happen too. You would find your voice. The real one. The one that's been buried under years of social conditioning and people-pleasing and fear of rejection. You would discover what you actually think, unfiltered by the need for approval. You would develop a relationship with yourself that's unshakable, because you'd no longer be abandoning yourself to protect others. And the people who stayed, the ones who could handle your clarity, would trust you in a way they've never trusted anyone else. This is the choice in front of you, and it's not a small choice. It's the choice between living in comfortable delusion or uncomfortable truth, between being liked and being real, between protecting everyone's feelings and honoring reality. And whatever you choose, there's a price. The price of comfort is self-abandonment. The price of clarity is loneliness. But here's the thing about that loneliness. It's not empty. It's full. Full of self-respect. Full of integrity. Full of the quiet power that comes from standing in truth even when everyone else is running from it. This is the psychology of people who are brutally honest. It's not rudeness, it's not cruelty. It's not lack of empathy. It's the radical act of choosing reality over illusion, truth over comfort, clarity over likability. It's the lonely courage of standing outside the warm circle and saying, I see what's real, and I'm not going to pretend I don't. And the question that remains is, are you ready to stand there too?